Hello, and welcome to Digital Systems 1. So in this course, we're going to be talking about building circuits. And when we talk about circuits, let's kind of break up a little bit about the different types that we have. So if we talk about electronics, so if we're going to talk about electronic device, we can kind of get down into it being two different types. We can have what is an analog device, and we can have what we're going to really focus on in this course, a digital device. And an important item we're going to first start off with is look at these two terms, analog and digital. What is the difference between these two items? Well, where we can start by looking at analog and digital is let's give an example. So we're going to have an example. And this example, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about numbers. And really, we're going to look at a number line of how we describe how our numbers are going to function. All right, so let's start with analog. Analog devices, while it might sound it's a little bit old, it's still an item that is used in a lot of the devices that we have today. Analog, we can kind of say that's the same as having a continuous result, a continuous input, a continuous output. So in our number line, analog would be I have a complete line where we can go all the way to negative infinity, all the way up to positive infinity, and we are holding all possible values. So if we're to like zoom in on one part, and let's say we just kind of zoom in on this little green area. In this little green area, we could say, that's holding the value 0, and then 0.000001, and then it has 0.000002 and 0.000003. We can hold all numbers. So that's kind of the idea of an analog device. The next item could be a digital. And with digital, what we're really looking at is we said analog was continuous. Digital, we're going to have that as being something that is discrete. These are going to be a fixed number. So it's not all possible. So we say continuous is all possible. Discrete is going to be fixed. Okay, so what does that look on our number line? Well, now our number line is going to have set points. Maybe it has 0 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5, and that's it. These are all possible values. So it's going to be a subset of analog. Okay, so that gives us a little bit idea of how we're kind of viewing these items. Well, what does this mean in electronics? In electronics, what we're going to focus on is electronics is really focused on electricity. And for us, we're going to say that really is a voltage. And with this voltage item, we might have a circuit coming in. We can have some input. And this input is going to be a voltage that can have a range of 0 volts, let's say, all the way up to 5 volts. And when we built this circuit, we're going to have that every voltage has meaning. Where for us, having 1 volt causes the circuit to act different than if we had 5 volts. Well, let's say here, let's go a little bit smaller. Let's say 1.1 volts. We have something that the whole circuit's going to act a little bit different. Well, in digital, we still have voltage, but digital acts a little bit different. And here, what we're going to do is when we do a digital, we're going to combine that with saying that I want binary. And binary means 2 possible values. So let's say I built this circuit. I'm going to have an input come in. Again, this input is on a voltage. And what we're going to do is we're going to create this circuit to work on only 2 possible values. The 2 possible values we're going to have it work on is a 0 volts or a 5 volts. So we only have the 2 ends of our range. So we have the 2 ends of the voltage range. So here our input might go from 0 to 5 volts, but I'm only going to be concerned about these 2 points. Now, what really happens is even though we go 0 volts all the way to 5 volts, we're really going to pick a couple of different areas. We'll have some voltage at the bottom end, some voltage at the top end. And as long as we're in that cutoff, we say we're at a 0 volts or we say we're at 5 volts. So we do have a little bit of range. Maybe for 0 volts, we can go anywhere from 0 volts to, let's say it's 0.7 volts. We would say all of that is the same as our blue region. On our green region, maybe we go all the way from 4.7 volts to 5 volts. We can cover all of that as a top region. So that's going to give us the idea of binary. Where binary is, we're giving 2 possible values. Now, these 2 values can have a number of different meaning. As you being the designer, you're going to assign meaning to 2 values. So the designer decides the meaning. So we can have possible items could be I have a 0 volts and I have 5 volts. Okay, that's 2 options. We might say it's a 0 or a 1. We might say it's off or on. We might say it's low or high. Maybe we might say something like it's not active, active. Maybe we're talking about a button, and maybe on a button, we're talking about not pushed and it's pushed. So there's a lot of different meanings that we can put into what it is that binary is going to mean. Okay, let's give another example of analog and digital. And let's talk about something that hopefully all of you are a little familiar with. And let me try copying again. Okay, so let's talk about a either an Xbox controller, a PlayStation controller. All of these have items that have this digital and analog piece to it. Okay, so let's focus on a few of these little areas. Let's talk about these directional pads. So here I'm going to highlight this green pad. And on this green pad, this is going to be that we have a digital button. So what is this digital button? Well, it is a little cross pad that we have. And this cross pad is going to have that is going to give us a discrete number of directions. Discrete directions. Well, what are these discrete directions? Well, it could be you can go up, you can go down, you can go left, or you can go right. It is one of 4 choices. Well, do we have some analog items on our device? Yes, we do. Let's talk about this left signal here. On this left signal, left stick here, this is an analog button we can talk about. And this analog button, it's a little controller that you put your thumb on. This is going to allow movement in any direction. So it's not just, the digital. We had 4 directions. On the analog, we can have a large array of directions. When we talk about buttons, we also have this pop up again. Like this B, we have the B button. Well, the B button will only be able to tell if it is pressed or not pressed. Well, if we look at the triggers on the sides, this trigger, we can tell the amount of pressure supplied. So we can have that it's a light touch going to like a medium touch, going to a hard touch. There's options of how we can tell these items are going to be selected. Okay, so that gives us another example of how we have circuits that have both analog and digital components. Now, if we talk a little bit about this controller, we can see that when we get to binary, again, is discrete. And with discrete, we're going to talk about bits. And the bits are going to be the number of discrete selections. So we can start off with 1 bit. 1 bit of binary, we're going to say that is that we have 2 options. I have a 0 and I have a 1. So if we're talking about the B button on the joystick, we could say 0 is not press. 1 is press. Then maybe go a little bit higher. We say I can have 2 bits of binary. For 2 bits of binary, this is going to give us 4 options. Well, maybe this is the D-pad. And on the D-pad, we can have up, down, left, and right. I'm going to give each of these an option. Let's say that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I have different options that I can use to select which direction I want it in this D-pad. All of these are discrete. There's no option of a little bit up, a little bit to the left, all the way to the right. It is either up, down, left, or right. It's either our button is press or button is not press. So this gives us the basics of what is a digital part of our circuit, and also the idea of what is binary. All right, so that ends this small little section of our lecture. And next, we're going to be talking about numbers.